Be'ezus Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Chullin Daf Kuf Tes, number 109. Basically, what we are discussing today is the concept of Chaticha Nachas Nevela. What does that mean? That, as you can see in the picture over here, when you have a drop of milk falling onto a piece of meat, right? So there is an opinion we're going to learn, and we touched on it yesterday, that the entire piece, the entire piece of meat becomes usser. It's not that there's just a piece of milk in here and the rest of the meat is kosher. The entire piece of meat becomes usser. And therefore, even if you could extract the milk and extract the milk, and let's say it gets spread upon the other pieces of meat, it's still it's going to be usser because the entire meat is usser. The entire piece of meat is usser. That's called chaticha nachas nevela. And another way of saying that is that even if you can extract the milk, the entire meat remains usser. So therefore, you really need to mevatel this piece of meat because now the meat is usser. It's not just the milk inside. Others hold that maybe this is just a chiddush by Basa B'Chala because milk is kosher, meat is kosher. When you mix them together, that's when they become one piece of nevela, one piece of issa, chaticha nasis nevela. But other opinions hold, no, it's just the milk that is usser inside the meat. If you were somehow going to extract the milk, then it spreads upon other kosher pieces of meat, and there's enough to nullify it, mavatal it, then it's not usser. So let us see that concept inside the Gemara over here. Here we go. We're starting from Ve'efshar l'soichetoi by Kuf Ches Amud Beis. Ve'efshar l'soichtei atzmoi tanoihi. If something could be squeezed out by itself, would you say it's usser? In other words, the question is, do you say the piece of meat becomes one piece of nevela when milk falls on it? The Tanya we learned in a brisa, tipas chalaf, a drop of milk, shenafla al hachaticha, it fell on one piece of meat. So the brisa says, kevan shenosan tam b'chaticha, as soon as this milk gives a little taste into that piece of meat, hachaticha atzma nasas nevela, the whole piece becomes a nevela. Vo'iseres kol hachatichas kulam, and then it will answer all pieces of meat, because they are the same type. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says in this picture over here that since this piece of meat became usser, and now it's mixed up with other pieces of meat, right? You see, it's other pieces of meat, and Rabbi Yehuda says if they're all the same type, meat versus meat. Meat versus meat is called min b'mino, and it never could become batal. So the entire pot is also according to Rabbi Yehuda. Comes along Chachamim. Chachamim say, ad shetitin tam b'roitiv uvakipa uvachatichais. The Chachamim say that the taste has to dissolve itself. It has to be strong enough milk to give taste into the soup, into the other pieces of meat, and to the stuff that's on the bottom. So according to Rabbi Chachamim, the Chachamim said you have a drop of milk falling in, and now you look at all these vegetables here and everything like that. If this milk does not give taste into the entire mixture, then the mixture is permitted. So Amar Rabbi said, Nirin divrei Rabbi Yehuda, I would paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, b'shaloi nia v'shaloi kisa. If you didn't shake around and mix up if you didn't stir it, or you didn't put a cover on it and sort of shake it around. V'divrei chachamim, and I would paskin like the chachamim, that it's mutter b'shaniya v'kisa, that you did shake it around. If you did shake it around, then it would be mutter. If you didn't shake it around, then everything is asur. That's what Rebbe said. Now, the Gemara wants to understand what did Rebbe say? What did Rebbe's trying to give a psak halacha, something to take home with, and let us understand this. My loinia v'loikisa. What does it mean? You didn't shake it and you didn't cover it. You just left it. One drop of milk fell on a piece of meat. If it's you didn't mix it at all, let's say take a look at this piece, a one drop of milk falling onto this piece of meat. So if you didn't mix it at all, and you didn't cover it and shake it around, so why are the other pieces of meat aser? Mivla bala, it swallowed a little bit of milk. Miflat like polit, it didn't extract anything because you didn't mix it. So why are the other pieces of meat aser in this thing? If you didn't move it around at all, then why is this everything aser? Ella, it must be loy near batchila ela b'soif. What it means is that when it dropped, you didn't move it. You left the milk drop on the piece of meat. And then once that piece of meat became aser, then you mixed it up. You mixed it up between the other piece of meat. You didn't cover the pot in the beginning, but at the end you did. So basically, now the taste of the meat spread to the other pieces of meat. Amai, but why? Habala, the hapalat. The milk entered the piece of meat, and it was extracted. So why are the other pieces of meat aser if after it fell onto this piece of meat, you mixed it up, but then the milk extracted into the other pieces of meat? The answer is because this chaticha nasas nevela, this became a nevela. This piece of meat is now aser, and we hold like Rabbi Yehuda min b'minai like bata. So now the milk becomes like meat, so to speak, and now everything is aser, and all these pieces of meat are becoming aser. So that's what he says. Because they're absorbing the meat from the original piece of meat that absorbed milk. So that's what he says. We hold, Rebbe holds, like Rabbi Yehuda, also Rabbi Yehuda holds that katicha nasas nevela, and also min b'minay leibato. So that's why everything becomes aser in that pot. Says the Gemara, Michlal. Rebbe seems to hold like Rabbi Yehuda, but not hold like Rabbi Yehuda. It must be, we can derive that Rabbi Yehuda was even more stricter. Michlal, the Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kinia mitchila batsoif, the kisa mitchila batsoif, asar. Rabbi Yehuda holds that even if, right when the milk dropped onto this meat, you mixed it up, right? Rabbi Yehuda holds it's still aser. If it didn't even have a chance to be absorbed by that piece of meat, if it didn't even have a chance to be absorbed here, Rabbi Yehuda says it's aser. So the question is why? If you mixed it up right away, then this piece didn't become an avela. The milk never even was joined into this piece. It was already spread out amongst the other pieces. So why is it aser? Why would Rabbi Yehuda hold aser? Rabbi Yehuda holds, even if you mixed it right away, aser, and Rebbe didn't like that. But let's understand Rabbi Yehuda, why would it be aser? Haloi bala klal. It never was swallowed in. You never swallowed it. It never absorbed it. Didn't even have a chance to become an avela. Because Rabbi Yehuda has this concern, Ema loinir yafa yafa, b'leikisa yafa yafa. Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that maybe you didn't stir it correctly, or maybe you didn't stir it fast enough, or cover it fast enough, and it became an avela. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, as soon as milk falls on this pot, even if you stirred it right away, it's aser. Rebbe didn't like that. Rebbe says, if you stirred it right away, then you won't say chaticha nasas nevela. You won't say, if you stirred it right away, then Rebbe would say, oh, you don't say chaticha nasas nevela. However, Rebbe would agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Rebbe would agree with Rabbi Yehuda that if you let it simmer a little bit, so now it became a chaticha nasas nevela, the whole thing became aser. So then, even if you mix it up later on, you mix up the whole pot, but and you don't know which is which, right? You say min b'minoi loy batal. You don't say it's batal b'roiv, that there's a majority of other kosher meat. You say min b'minoi loy batal. if it's in the same type, it never becomes nullified, and therefore it remains usher. So Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yehuda in one part, and it disagrees in another area. Says the Gemara. Let's further explain Rebbe. Divrei Chachamim kishenir v'kisa. Rebbe holds like the Chachamim. If you stirred it right away and it didn't become nevela, if you didn't do it right away, you only let it first fall on the piece of meat and it became a nevela, and then you stirred it. Amrit near and Rabbi Yehuda, but you said you hold like Rabbi Yehuda that you do say chaticha nasas nevela. If you let it simmer right away and you didn't mix it right away, we said Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and that it becomes a piece of nevela. Ella near mitchila batzaif. It's right when it dropped, the milk dropped, you were stirring it. The kisa mitchila batzaif, and therefore, since you mixed it right away. And you mixed it right away, so the milk never really settled onto this piece of meat. It's actually spread into the vegetables and the soup and everything like that. Then you paskin like the chachamim that if there's no 60 of this milk, if there's 60 times more vegetables and meat in the broth corresponding to that piece of milk, then the stew remains mutter. Says the Gemara, but what would Chachamim hold? Chachamim are even more kuladik. Michlal, the Rabbanim Savri, Rabbanim will hold even more, even they're more kuladik than Rebbe. Why? Because Rabbanan, since he's picking what Rabbanan hold, Michlal, the Rabbanim Savri, Rabbanan hold near b'soif v'loy near betchila kisa b'soif v'loy kisa betchila. Even if Rabbanan would go even one step further, that even if you didn't mix it right away, you let it simmer. And you stirred it later, but right in the beginning, you let it settle, the milk settle on the meat, the Rabbanan still will hold mutter. Because Alma Kasavri Afshalasoichtoi mutter. The Rabbanan hold of this concept that there's no such a thing of Chaticha Nasas Nevela. According to Rabbanan, this whole thing is permitted. Is permitted. And this, according to Rabbanan, it's permitted. As long as if the milk was later on extracted from this meat and went into the other meats, and of course there's 60 corresponding to it, so then it would be mutter. So Rabbanan hold two things. One, min b'minai is batal, maybe b'roiv, maybe you need 60. And Rabbanan hold that you don't say this concept of chaticha nasas nevela. If you somehow were able to extract the milk after it was simmered into that first piece of meat, then it would be permitted. Rebbe doesn't hold like that. So we see a machlekes between, do you say chaticha nasas nevela or not? Concludes the Gemara. Amalei Rav Acha medifti leRavina. Rav Acha from Difti said to Ravina, "Amai the be'efshal l'soichadai pligi." How do you know they're arguing in the concept of chaticha nasas nevela? Dilma efshal l'soichadai divra hakol asa. Maybe Rabbanan will agree that efshal l'soichadai, that means chaticha nasas nevela. Everybody agrees it's asa. Maybe there's no opinion that says that there's no concept of chaticha nasas nevela. Everybody holds chaticha nasas nevela. But what's the difference? They're arguing on one concept. Whether you say min b'minai batal, that's chachamim, and Rabban, that which is chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda says min b'minai is never batal, and the chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda would both agree that we are choishes, we are concerned. Maybe you didn't stir it. Maybe if you didn't stir it right away, we're concerned that you're not going to be careful about that. So that would be the machlekes. The machlekes is just one topic, whether min b'minei batal or min b'minei loy batal. But the Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda both have this concern that if the milk dropped and you stirred it right away, I'm concerned that you didn't stir it right correctly, and therefore Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yehuda that min b'minoi is not batal. Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei, so that's Rabbi Yehuda. They're arguing with min b'minai. Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei. Rabbi Yehuda is going according to his reasoning. The alma min b'minai like bottle that a min and its mean is never bottle. That means mixing the same kind never becomes nullified. Rabbanan l'tameu. Rabbanan go according to their reasoning. The alma min b'minai bottle. They will hold min b'minai is bottle, and Rabbi will paskin like Rabbi Yehuda and not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan when you say that maybe you didn't stir it too fast. Maybe you didn't want. So Rebbe will hold that if you stirred it right away, Rebbe will hold that it becomes bottle. Rabbanan will say no. You don't say that it's that chaticha nasas nevela over here because we're concerned maybe you didn't stir it right away. So the Gemara backfires and says no. You can't say that's the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. Hi mai. If you want to say the Rabbanan b'min b'minai, Yamar Bishlama the Rabbanan b'min b'minai hacha Rabbi Yehuda svir lehu uve'efshel l'saychle pligi. If you want to say that the Rabbanan argue on two different things, first of all, they argue on min b'minai, and they also argue on the duas chaticha nasas nevela. So then Rebbe can say, I hold like the Chachamim, and I can hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Haini de Kama Rebbe, Nirin de Rabbi Yehuda. I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, but not totally like Rabbi Yehuda. But min b'minoi is loy bottle. But I don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda that says maybe you're concerned you didn't stir it 100%. And he could say, Baha divrei Chachamim, Baha. And I paskin like the Chachamim, that we're not concerned about you didn't stir it so fast. I'm not that we're not concerned. I paskin like the Chachamim that way, but I don't paskin like the Chachamim who hold min b'minoi is bottle. So you could pick and choose Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. But Eli Amrit efshel seichte dibra kol asa. If you hold the Chachamim hold of there's no such a thing of chaticha of everybody holds chaticha nasis nevela. If there's only one concept min b'minoi kami palge. So then all Rebbe had to say was, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, that mean b'minoi like bottle. Because in everything else, and everything else, he's disagreeing with Rabbi Yehuda, and the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Yehuda that maybe you're not stirring it so well. So, hi nirin to Rabbi Yehuda, v'einirim. He should have said, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, and I don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda that we're concerned about that you're not going to mix it well. Because Chachamim agreed to that point. And so therefore, all he could have said is that. The fact that he said Chachamim and the Rabbi Yehuda, he picks and chooses, I paskin Rabbi Yehuda this way, and I paskin like the Chachamim this way. That means that Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim have a double argument. One argument is that they're arguing min b'minoi bottle, a triple argument. Min b'minoi bottle, Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Chachamim is saying min b'minoi loy bottle. They're arguing whether you say chaticha nasas nevela or not. Rabbi Yehuda says yes. Chachamim say no. And of course, are we concerned maybe you're not going to stir it so much? I mean, Rabbi Yehuda, Chachamim certainly don't agree with that. Rabbi Yehuda says we're concerned about that. So that's why you can pick and choose and say, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda this way and Chachamim that way, v'sulay midi. So bottom line is, the whole Gemara point taken, that this concept of chaticha nasas nevela, that when milk simmers onto a piece of meat, that the whole meat becomes asar. Even if you extract the milk, if you were able to suck out the milk, the whole meat is now an asar diga meat. That is a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. New Mishnah, new topic. Hakchol, a udder. So an udder has milk in it. When you shecht an animal, when you shecht a cow, so the udder had milk in it. So what should you do? Kaire, you rip it open. Baitzis chalav, take out the milk after you do the shechita. But loikar, if you didn't rip it open and you cooked the udder, so it's bishul basa b'chalav. Eina olav, you didn't get an avera. Halev, the heart. The heart has a lot of blood in it, and here we're dealing with the heart of a bird. So it has a lot of blood in it. Kairei, you should rip it open. Umaytzias dama, you salt it and take out the blood. Loikarai, if you didn't rip it open, and you ate that heart without salting it, so Eina Oivalov, you don't get an Avera because there's no Kezias. There's no Kezias in the there's no kazayas of blood in the heart of a bird. And the heart itself doesn't absorb any of the blood because it's smooth. So therefore, you're permitted, you're allowed to eat it. If you ate it, you didn't get an avera. Says the Gemara. We go to Amid Beis. Amar Abzeira Amar Rav. By the udder, olav. You don't have to, if you cook the udder after and you didn't take the milk out, you didn't get an avera, umutter. And now you could eat that piece of meat because you're allowed to eat that udder, even though it has milk in it. Because once the Torah only asked milk that was extracted, but once it always was in the animal, never got extracted, and now the animal is dead because you shechted it, you're allowed to eat that udder with the milk. Says the Gemara of Anan Tanan, didn't we learn in our Mishnah, Eina Oivelov, you don't get an Avera if you cook it. Miver hu delay ava, you don't get an Avera if you cook it. But maybe our Mishnah is saying that you're not permitted to midrabanan, you shouldn't eat that udder. Answers the Gemara, really, there is no isser to eat that udder. And you could eat that udder with the milk in it. But I did the boil and missed the sefer, but since the end of the Mishnah says, Halev, Kare, might say, if you didn't rip it, you didn't get an Avera. So in the end of the Mishnah, there, if you do eat the blood of the heart, you would get an Avera, even because you don't get the Malkus because there's no Kazayas, but you're eating blood. Hasam over there, Miva Deloy Avar, you don't get an Avera, but there is an Isser because you're eating some blood. So Tananami Reisha ain't overlove. So that's why it says by the Reisha, by the udder, you didn't get an Avera if you eat it. But really, Rav says you have to read the Mishnah, the udder. Even if you didn't extract the milk that was in the udder after you slaughtered it and you cooked it, you didn't get an Avera, and you could actually eat it, according to the first version of Rav. So the Gemara says, Lema Messiah, let us bring a proof. The Mishnah, Brisa says, Chal, the udder, kairi umaitzias chalavi. You should really rip it and take out the milk, lechatchila. Loy kare, but if you didn't rip it, ein oil of olive, you didn't get an avera. Pretty much like our Mishnah. Halev, the heart, kairi umaitzias domai. If the heart, you could rip it open and take out the blood. Loy kare, if you didn't rip it open and you cooked it, then remember the blood will not, the heart muscles are smooth, so the blood doesn't go into the flesh of the heart. So kaira, you could rip it, lacha bishulai, after you cooked it, salt it, take out the blood and eat the heart. Umutter, it's mutter to eat. So here you can see this brisa says like this: levu debaya kriya. The heart, you could rip it out and salt it after you cook it. Avchal, but the udder, even after you cook it, leibaya kriya, you don't have to take out the milk. You could eat it with the milk in it. So we see, like Rav said, that lechatchila you could even eat this udder that absorbed some milk. So you have a proof to Rav. So the Gemara says this brisa is not such a proof. Dilma maybe levu desagale b'kriya. Maybe the brisa is saying that the heart you can salt it after you cook it because the blood didn't go into the heart. So there is a way to fix it. Avakol, but the udder, after you cook it, the milk went into the meat of the udder. Like sagila b'kriya, so you can't just rip it open. It's already absorbed into the milk, into the walls of the udder, and therefore you'll never be able to eat it. So maybe this brisa does not agree with Rav. But the Ikadi Amri, others say Rav went strict. Amar Abzera, Amar Rav, Eina Oiva Olav. You don't get an avera if you're eating the udder, for cooking the udder. But it's usher to eat the udder because it has, now that you cooked it, it absorbed milk. So the Gemara says, let's bring a proof from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says you don't get an avera. You don't get an avera for cooking it, or but there's an isra midrabanan to eat that udder. Answers the Gemara, not so fast. Our Mishnah, you can read it either way. Maybe our Mishnah is trying to say there is no isra for eating it. There's no isra for eating it. But since the Mishnah is aligning itself up with the heart, and the heart you can't eat it after you cook it because there's still blood there. So Hassam over there by the heart, maybe by the heart you must say that you don't get an avera, but there's an issa to eat the heart unless you take out the blood. So that's why the Reisha says you don't get an Avera for it, but maybe our Mishnah disagrees with Rav and would hold that with the udder, even if you cooked it, you could actually eat the udder. Tashma, come in here. The udder, you could rip it open and take out the milk. Loy kare, if you didn't rip it open, ain't oil if you don't get an Avera. Halev kare moitzias damai, loy kare kare lacha bishulei mutar. So here, by the Mishnah, it says, the Mishnah, this brisa seems to tell you that by the heart, you must salt it after you cook it. Levu de bayikriya. Avakachal, but the udder, loy bayikriya, you don't have to rip it open, and therefore maybe this brisa disagrees with Rav. You could eat the udder after you cook it with its milk. So doesn't that disagree with Rav? And says the Gemara, Dilma Levu, it's not a question against Rav. Maybe Dilma Levu desagile bekriya. Maybe the heart, you could actually salt it and rip it open after you cook it. Avakachal, maybe the brisa agrees with Rav. Loy sagale bekriya, you can't cook it, you can't extract the milk that's in it, and it'll be also to eat. So bottom line is, so the Gemara says, the bottom line is you have two versions of what Rav said. Either Rav said that the udder, it has milk in it, right? But it wasn't extracted. So Rav said that the Mishnah says if you cook the udder, you didn't get an Avera. What about eating it? So Rav, according to the verse Lashon, says you could eat it because it's not milk. It never was extracted. The second version says, Rav said, it's aser. So Tanya Kalishna Kamama the Rav, we have a brisa. Kechol shabish that agrees to the first way of Rav, that it's permitted. Kechol shabish loy bechalave, even if you cook the udder with its milk, mutter, you can eat it. But keva shabish bechalave, aser. But the stomach that let's say a baby cow, right? You shechted a baby cow and you find milk in its stomach, then if you cooked it with the milk inside, then it's awesome. My hefresh bein zelazet. What's the difference between the udder and the stomach? Zeh konis b'meya. The milk in the stomach was extracted from its mother, so it was extracted while the mother was alive, went into the baby, so the calf, so it was real milk. So therefore, it's usher. Zeh, but the milk, the milk in the udder, eina konis b'meyav, was never extracted. So it's not really considered milk. One more piece, 1 more minute. Kate said, how do you rip open an udder? If you're going to cook it, right, if you're going to cook the udder, preferably you should rip it crisscross and then squeeze the udder against the wall to try to extract as much milk as you can out of that udder. Amalei Rab Lazar l'shamei, Rab Lazar said to his attendant, Krali, just rip the udder open, take out whatever you can, I'm going to eat it. My kamash malan, why is this brought into Gemara? Masnisni, isn't that what the Mishnah says? You rip it. Kamash malan, Rabbi Lazar held the loy be'ina shasi be'erev v'tacha b'kais. You don't have to rip it crisscross and squeeze it against the wall, especially if you're going to roast it. Because when you're going to roast it, it's not going to be absorbed. It's just going to be extracted. So therefore, you don't have to rip it. You just make a little hole, take out some milk, and then just roast it. But I guess if you're going to actually cook it, then really, lechatchila, we try to extract the milk from that udder as best as we can. And all this is probably because of maras ayin. Okay, we will stop over here. So to briefly review, we learned today regarding the machlokes tanoim whether chaticha nasis is nevela. Rabbi Yehuda holds the chaticha itself becomes aser, and not only that, min b'minoi lebatel. And Chachamim says that you don't say the piece of meat becomes aser if it's extracted by stirring it. Then if the milk comes out, it could become batel in the rest of the soup. And Rebbe holds, so that's the Chachamim. And Rebbe holds, if you stir it in the beginning, right away, and you don't say Chaticha Nasus Nevela, he holds like the Chachamim, that it's batal. In the end, if you only let it simmer first, so Rebbe holds Chaticha Nasus Nevela, and Chaticha Nasus Nevela, it would never be batal, even it's mean b'minoi, assuming the soup was made out of meat and stuff. So it would mean b'minoi, it would never become batal. So that's what we learned in the first part of the shir. and that was the final understanding between machlekes between Yehuda and Chachamim. Do you say katicha nasas nevela or not? Then we discovered regarding the udder and the heart. So of course the udder has milk in it, right? But if midiraisa, the isabasa b'chalav is only after it's extracted. But if it's inside the animal that died, that you shechted it, it's only asa midarbonim. So halacha is that if you cook the udder without taking out the milk, you don't get malchus. But really, we came to the conclusion that you should, if you wanted to eat it, you should rip it open and take out the milk. The heart of a bird is you have to take out the blood. If you cooked it without taking out the blood, so the heart muscle is very smooth, so it doesn't absorb any of the blood. Therefore, you have to. So therefore, the heart doesn't become usher, but you're allowed to rip the heart open, take out the blood after you cook the heart. And if you eat the heart with the blood, of course, you won't get it's usher, but the blood of a bird's heart doesn't have a kazayas of dam, and you're not going to get punished for that. Okay, you don't get malchus for that. Okay, so we'll stop over here. There's other parts of the daf, and we'll see that in Mitzvah Shem tomorrow.